Good afternoon, everybody. So I'm going to forge forward. I'm sitting on my bed here because, as you know, I'm supposed to be taking rest, so I may need to lean back. If I need to lean back, as I can't put pressure on my lower spine, then you'll understand why I'm doing that. Normally, professors are not supposed to lie in bed when they give their classes, but under the circumstances, I don't have a lot of options. So we start the Bhāgavata Purāṇa, my friends. This is my text that is closest to my heart. We've done a lot of work. We've done great. I think Laura told me that was 28 of you got 100% on the quiz. 28 students. I've never had anything like that. Normally you have 3 or 4 get 100%. In the past, and we even make them stand up and applaud them. 28. So that's a testimony to Laura's hard work. She's been a great TA. I hope you appreciated her. Also a testimony to your hard work. Let's not minimize that. It's been not, some of the stuff has been easier, I know, than some of the other stuff, but we had to plow through a bit of Vedanta there, a bit of Nyaya, a bit of Mimamsa. We had to respect the course. The course is philosophy, my friends. And we looked at the non-theistic traditions. If you're going to be a theist or a non-theist, you better have pretty good reasons. Humans have been arguing over this since the beginning of time in all traditions. Some traditions stifle debate. You're not allowed to be a non-theist. You might get, burnt or killed in some way. Not India. I mean, it's always been non-theist. There's always been theists. Vast majority of the world's population in literary history have been theistic. But there's always been those that challenge the idea of God. Why do we need to posit a God? How can we explain suffering? You've heard the arguments over and over. You heard them in the Western traditions if you took a course in Christian theology, for example, or Islamic theology. In India, there was no suppression of these views. And so therefore, if you were a non-theist, you could be upfront about it. Like that. And as Buddhists were, as Jains were, there would not, there might be cultural suppression and different kinds of suppression, but not theological suppression. That was never really a feature of the Indian intellectual tradition. Anyway, we did some hard work, did so well done, but also shows that when I said we really tried to make it easy, we really did. I suppose we'll have to make that final a little bit more challenging. If 28 people, it was like over a quarter of you, get 100%, then I guess we're all doing our share. We're trying to reach out to you and make things accessible. We want you to have a good experience. We want to go away with a good samskara, good memory, in addition to learning things. And obviously you're students and you have GPAs and you have to, be worried about your grade point average. Even if you follow the Gita, don't be attached to the results. Well, you still have, it's hard not to be when you're a student. So well done, everybody. And now we move on to which I think you're going to love. No more intense philosophy. There'll be philosophy in the verses we engage. We now want to look at what does Ishvara look like, not just in philosophical discussions. And we saw what Ishvara looked like a little bit in the Gita on the battlefield, Krishna, but, that's fine. But we learned that bhakti is the highest tradition. Remember, we left off, give up all dharma and surrender to me. I made a big point of that. We won't be looking at that today. But what does it mean to be a bhakta? What do bhaktas do that make them different from other kinds of yogis? And what does Ishvara look like if someone decides that the goal of life is to seek God rather than seeking some temporary thing? What does that sort of a life look like? So we turn to the Bhāgavata Purāṇa, my own dearmost text that I spent my whole life studying. And this is the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavat is just Bhagavan, but in Sanskrit, when you put Bhagavan next to the word Gita or other such words beginning with a guttural, then the Bhagavan becomes Bhagavad for reasons we don't need to get into. It's a compound. The Bhagavad Gita. Now we're the Bhagavata Purāṇa, but it's the same word Bhagavata, just like Bhagavad is Bhagavan, just a slightly different grammatical rule. It becomes a Bhāgavata. And Purāṇa means the story of Bhagavan. So we'll look at the stories next class, in the sense that we will look at the birth of Krishna. We'll be looking at Krishna, focusing on Krishna, that are the many forms of Ishvara. We'll focus on Krishna because we have a connection with Krishna through the Gita, and also because Krishna happens to be the form of Ishvara that as my own heart is particularly attracted to. So why not? If you're going to study with a professor, you probably want to. It seems like a good idea that you learn from that professor whatever is meaningful to the professor, because then that person will make it come alive. Whatever it is, quantum mechanics, some economic theory, some political theory. If that's really meaningful to the professor, they're going to be able to share that enthusiasm and inspiration. It doesn't mean necessarily that you'll share the same view of it, but at least you'll get a nice, rich idea. It's coming from somebody's, from sort of innermost core. It's coming from if that person really finds it meaningful, that they're going to be able to share how that's meaningful to you in a more powerful and richer way. So we look at the Bhāgavata Purāṇa, the 10th book, 12 books of this Purāṇa. Purāṇa means a story, a history. It's a traditional name for history, that which took place in the past. And where does it say how long we've been recording for up there? Okay. So as a matter of fact, right behind me, there's a painting of Radha Krishna. That's Radharani pointing to the moon. So we encounter these stories of Krishna with his beloved devotees, his beloved consort, his beloved friends, his parents. We'll encounter that in the next lecture and the last couple of lectures of the course. I'm not sure how many we have. I think probably including this one, 4 maybe. I'll of course find that out. But before we enter into the actual life of Krishna, I want to give you we're going to read the text of how the Bhāgavata Purāṇa, the first book out of 12. How does it open? How does it present itself? How does it lead us to understanding what it means to be a devotee of Ishvara? That will be a bhakta. We've encountered bhakti yoga in the Gita. Krishna says bhakti is the highest form of yoga. Fix your mind on me, offer everything to me, do everything for me. Okay, now what does an Ishvara-centric life look like in the Krishna tradition? But you can do the same for Shiva, of course, and the goddess and any of the other forms. So that's what we're going to be looking at. So I think completely connected to our course. I mean, Ishvara is not just an abstract concept, but it's a real life entity, in people's actual lives, and people feel and believe that they have real relations and connections with Ishvara. So what does that look like in the Krishna tradition? Let's start with the story of King. Oops, that was a bad move. Let's get rid of that. Now where did you all go? Ah, there we go. So why didn't that come up in the screen share? Oh, there we go. All right. So this is the grandson of Arjuna, right? Gita, conversation, Krishna and Arjuna, the whole thing. Krishna's gone back to his divine abode in Brahman, the personalist abode. Parikṣit's now the emperor of the universe. He met Krishna in the womb. And there's so many stories, we won't get into that. Some of you will know that story. Now he's the emperor. And one day he goes out to the forest of book 1, chapter 18, right? The 12 books, book 1, 18 chapters. So not actually starting at the very, very, very beginning. But it's a nice story. So King Parikṣit, all right? Parikṣit is going to be the main character here with Śuka. Parikṣit, grandson of Arjuna, which makes him the grandnephew of Krishna. He set out to the forest to hunt, right? He's a warrior, he's allowed to hunt. Yogis are not allowed to kill animals or eat meat. Brahmins are not, Vaishyas are not, but the warrior caste have certain exceptions, and they are allowed to hunt. So it's because they have to practice their archery, they have to keep the animals, the forests free of wild animals. Of course, in this case, he's consuming deer. So he became hungry, tired and thirsty. 25, not finding any body of water, he enters into the hermitage, which is the ashram. And the ashram in the ancient text is just a small little mud hut. And there's a sage called Shamika. He's there He's sitting peacefully, his eyes are closed. Okay, why is it? We can guess what he's doing from Patanjali. He's practicing Chitta Vritti Nirodha. And not only does he practice it, but practicing that, but 26, Shamika had attained the state beyond the three states of consciousness. What are the three states of consciousness? What does our consciousness do? Where it's either awake, waking consciousness, dream consciousness, deep sleep. What's the one beyond that? Well, that's, remember Patanjali, when you Chitta Vritti Nirodha, then Drashtu Sarupe Vastanam. The seer abides in its own nature. So he'd attained that state, samadhi, the goal of yoga. He was experiencing the Atman. Who was experiencing the Atman? Who's the he that's experiencing the Atman? Let's express that a bit more precisely. The Atman is immersed in its own pure nature of Atman. Consciousness is aware of consciousness. Four states of consciousness. Waking, what are you conscious of? World out there. Dream, what are you conscious of? Internal world of memories shown about in the form of dream. So that's two things consciousness is conscious of. What about deep sleep? Well, consciousness in deep sleep is conscious of, the mind is in a state of tamas, dense blackness. So it's only, consciousness does not go to sleep, but the mind goes into a state of tamas. Okay, and what's the fourth then? It attained the state beyond. The Upanishads, the Mandukya calls it the fourth, the Chaturtha. What is that? Consciousness is absorbed in consciousness. It's only conscious of consciousness. Try to see if you could say that a few times. Consciousness is what is consciousness conscious of? In the fourth state, consciousness is conscious of consciousness itself. Of course, Buddhists wouldn't accept this, but yoga, it's the goal of yoga. And so he was completely inactive. If consciousness is only conscious, it's not conscious of the mind, it's not thinking, it's not feeling, it's not directing action. It's not aware of the world out there, so it's completely inactive. We can say transactive. So his senses, prana, life airs, mind and intelligence restrained. This is what Nirodha means in Patanjali Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Dreadlocks are disheveled if you're a yogi, right? You don't go in there with a brush and a hairdryer in the forest with gel. I don't think so. Oh, so you let your hair just grow and you pile it up and you put some cow dung in there. Why do you put cow dung in there? It's antiseptic, my friends. Don't stick your nose up at things we don't understand. It's cow dung is pure. It has disinfecting qualities. It's used in cooking in India. If you live in a mud hut, I've lived in mud huts. It's the best day of the week. You get a nice half a bucket of cow dung, put some water in, make a paste. You smear it. Smells absolutely wonderful. Very sattvic. So just because it's out of our cultural box, don't laugh at that. Put a bit of cow dung in. You can try it out next time you go. Next time you go out on a date, if you put some cow dung in your hair, see how it goes. See how it goes for you, my friends. But if you're in the forest, dreadlocks, right? Real dreadlocks, not like the ones you pay $200 for in Brooklyn. No. You just let the hair mat. So he was disheveled, draped on a deer skin. Which again is supposed to have, keep bugs away. So his throat was dry, and so the king comes along, right? The sage is in a state of samadhi. He's not even aware the king has entered in his little hut. How's he going to be aware? There's no external consciousness by definition, right? So, but the king doesn't know that. He's thirsty, so his mind is a little bit agitated by rajas, desire. He's a good king, saintly king, not a bad guy, great bhakta of Vishnu. But when you get into a state of intense desire, that clouds your judgment. His throat was dry, and he requested water from the sage, who was in that state. He doesn't, and he gets no reply. He doesn't receive a straw seat, no sweet words, no beverage, nothing at all. So the king, feeling he'd been disrespected, became angry. So he's having a bad moment. He's having a rajasic moment. So the king's anger and resentment suddenly erupted against the Brahmana. If you desire something, even if you're a good person, you might even be a great sage king like Parikṣit, but if your desire is strong enough, it can come out as anger. It comes out in a way that you're going to regret later. So this has never happened before to the king, but he had become compromised by hunger and thirst. His wisdom, his normal respect for the Brahmanas compromised. His judgment had been compromised. And that's what desire does. Compromises our judgment. The stronger you have a desire, the more you cling to it, the more you're going to ignore sound reasoning that might go against that desire. You don't want to hear it. The nature of desire can overwhelm the mind. So as he's leaving, he's frustrated. What do? He places a dead snake with the tip of his bow on the shoulder of the Brahmana sage out of anger. He goes back to the city. He wants to leave his calling, he wants to leave a sign of his frustration. And the dead snake is obviously impure, especially a Brahmana sage. I'm sure you wouldn't be thrilled if someone put a dead snake around your neck. You don't have to be a Brahmana sage to feel that that's a very offensive thing to do. But then as he goes off, he calms down a bit. So the king wonders as he goes off, were his eyes closed because he has closed down his senses? Was he really, maybe he was in a state of yoga? Maybe he was in a state of samadhi. Or was it rather really a feigned state of samadhi? Was he just pretending because he didn't want to interact with me because I'm a warrior, I'm out hunting, I'm doing something impure, right? Killing an animal is a very impure thing to do from Brahmana point of view. Inflicting violence on a poor creature. That's an awful thing to do. It's murder of a living entity that feels and suffers just like us. So maybe the Brahmana didn't want to be, right? If somebody came to your house and was a murderer, right? Are you going to open the door and say, oh, come on in, why, let's have a cup of tea? I don't think so. So what to speak of a Brahmana, for, trying to be pure so as to pursue Brahman. Now, so all this is going on, right? Now, while this had been taking place, the Brahmana's son had been playing with other children. He's a kid. But although he was but a boy, he was very powerful. Past life austerities, perhaps, he could curse. When he heard his beloved father had been subject to an offense by the king, he uttered these words then and there. Aha, he says, let's skip all this. He says, these warriors are lowly compared to us high Brahmins. So this is caste kind of consciousness, caste ego. So then he says, down here, 35, since Lord Krishna, the punisher of the miscreants, Lord Krishna is not here anymore to punish the bad guys. So I, myself, will today punish the transgressor of the law, of the Dharma. He's transgressed Dharma. The Kshatriya class, the warrior caste, supposed to respect the Brahmanas. My father's a Brahmana, highest caste, intellectuals, the teachers, the priests, the ritualists. Warriors are supposed to protect them, not put dead snakes around their neck. So he's transgressed Dharma. Now he says, I'm going to curse him. Just witness my power. Watch what I do, he says. Okay, this is now you see what I mean. This is easier than Nyaya's arguments against Buddhism, isn't it? But enjoy it, my friends. You've deserved it. Let's immerse our minds together in these wonderful stories. So after uttering this to his companions, the sage's son, his eyes red with anger, touched the water of Okoshiki River and released a verbal thunderbolt in the form of a curse. I've never quite figured out why they have to touch water when they curse, but they usually do. And I've never had an explanation for that. But somehow they have to touch water when the Brahmins curse somebody. Of course, real Brahmin shouldn't be cursing anybody, but that's another story. His dad is a real Brahmana. The kid's a punk caste Brahmin. Dad's a real yogi. We'll see. Kid, he's just proud because his dad's a Brahmin. He's going around, strutting his stuff. He's a punk Brahmana. How about that? So what's the curse? Unleashed by me, the snake bird Takshaka will bite that destroyer of his family's reputation. So in other words, he's going to release this kind of a snake bird creature that's going to bite the king in 7 days. And he says this Parikṣit, who's his family? His family's Krishna, Arjuna, his grandson of Arjuna. And the kid says he's destroyed the reputation of his great Arjuna and the great Sri Bhagavan Krishna. He's transgressed the limits of the law. Law means dharma, and he's insulted my beloved father, he said. So having cursed him, the boy returned to the ashram, a hermitage, goes back home, right? He hears about this, playing with his friends. Probably somebody told him, and he curses him from wherever he was. Comes back home, saw his father with the corpse of the snake on his shoulder. Father's still in meditation. Dead snake around his shoulder like a garland. Overwhelmed, he cried out. So the father, he comes in the Brahmin lineages. There's 10 Brahmin lineages. This is the one of Angira. He heard the cry of his son. right? So even though with samadhi, and even though his senses are closed down, and even though normally in samadhi you don't hear anything, but there's something about the cry, the wail of a child that will penetrate the consciousness of a parent, even if the parent's in a deep state of samadhi. So somewhere or other that wail entered into his mind and caused him to, the mind to activate and come out of the fourth state of consciousness. Sarupe Vastanam, Patanjali says, consciousness aware of consciousness itself. Trans is trans everything. Trans rational, trans sensual, trans all other forms of consciousness. So it comes out of that. He saw the dead snake on his shoulder. Ain't no big deal. He's a yogi. What does he care? He just threw the snake aside at 40 and he didn't get angry. If you've attained the state of pure consciousness, everything else is trivial and meaningless. You're not going to get offended by some silly little thing. You've attained the bliss of pure consciousness, Satchidananda. You've attained Brahman. You've had an experience of Brahman. What's a dead snake going to mean to that? He's a real yogi, not like his kid. So he says, my son, why do you well? What has wronged you? What has wronged you? What has wronged you? So the kid tells him, and the dad's not happy about this. He did not approve of his son's curse upon the king. He would not deserve such a thing. All right. So he had a Rajasic moment. Fine. The king, shouldn't have done that, but he wasn't evil or bad. He was just really thirsty. And he, so he had a moment, a little relapse, did a foolish thing. But how does he deserve to be cursed, to die for that? Aho, aho, you've done a grave thing today. You've inflicted an enormous punishment for a minor offense. And he goes on like this. You shouldn't have done it. No, 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 no. Without the king, we'd be like us without a government. We would think that society would break down. Who's going to protect you? There's no law and order. Government's broken down. People would just be pillaging. Remember what happened in London about a few years ago? There was a breakdown and there was fires. Somehow there was a breakdown in central London, and there was just unrestrained pillaging. It smashed up open shops. Went on for hours. It's a rampage. There was some temporary, I can't remember what caused the. So that's right in our modern Western culture. So what to speak back then? Same thing. If there's no king, there's no law and order. So he goes on like that, condemning his son for such an act. Look, the king is the protector of Dharma. He's the lord of men, a sovereign of wide renown. He's a sage king, great bhakta. The poor man was beset by hunger, thirst, and fatigue. Oh, he just wanted to drink. He didn't deserve to be cursed in that manner. So we'll skip all that. But it says here, the Lord's devotees, even though certainly capable, the father could have cursed the king. So even though he was certainly capable of doing so, but because he's a real bhakta, he's not some kind of a punk, caste Brahmin. Oh, my father's a Brahmin, so I'm a Brahmin, without actually pursuing Brahman, without actually being renounced and living simply and giving and serving and all of the things that Brahman is supposed to do, teach and study and teach and perform rituals on behalf of the society and distribute charity and accept charity and distribute it. Six functions of a Brahmin. Father's the real one, not the kid. So even though he had been disrespected by the king, the great sage did not consider this to be an offense, because he understands, it's just the guna. The king had a Rajasic moment. Well, who doesn't? But rather, he was more distressed by the offense made by his son. Generally, saintly persons, real yogis, real Brahmins, not those in India that go around and try to stick their nose up at everybody because they were born Brahmins. Not those. Real Brahmins. When they're made to encounter the dualities of the world, happiness, distress, all the things that come and go, good, bad, they're neither disturbed nor elated by the actions of others. They see, look, this is my karma. Somebody did this to me, it's my karma. Right? They think happiness comes and goes, distress comes and goes. Why? Why are they like that? Because they've realized the Atman, what does that mean? It's situated beyond the gunas. So they look at the gunas, the world out there made of the gunas, sattva, rajas, tamas, everything is changing. People's minds are affected by the gunas. This person is being nice to me. Now he's being mean to me. It's just the gunas. And if you've gone beyond the gunas, what do you care about the gunas? It's just a play of energy. So this is because they've realized the Atman situated beyond the gunas. So now, meanwhile, the great king, Now he's calmed down. Maybe he probably had a drink somewhere, drink of water. Thinking about the offense that he had done was extremely troubled in mind. Now he's thinking, oh my God, what did I do? How did I allow myself to get overwhelmed by that anger like that? He said, oh, I performed a despicable deed against an innocent Brahmana. By the way, the Aryans are followers of Vedic culture. I know the term has been appropriated by right-wing nationalists. It's a Sanskrit word. It needs to be reclaimed. Not a bad word. It's a high, an Aryan is a person that follows Dharma and high Vedic principles. He goes, what did I do? And then he starts to worry. This is certain that a terrible calamity will very soon befall me. So I'm going to get karma for this. This is, because because of the offense I performed against a Brahmana, a real Brahmana. And then he doesn't worry. He said, because he's also a great yogi. He says, okay, let my karma come. It's good for me. Good for me. Let me take the hit. I'll take the hit. And that will help me, never do something like this again. Let this freely occur to absolve me of sin, so I never commit such an act again. So here's the thinking of a real yogi, sage. Since I'm so wretched, or even though he's the emperor of the universe, of the known world, but he's in his mind, he's humble. He's just doing his dharma. Happens to be born as the grandson of Arjuna. Since he thinks he's wretched, look, I offended a Brahmin. Let the fire of the Brahmanas rage even today. Let this curse that's going to come, let it consume my kingdom, my strength, my wealth, treasury, so that I never again harbor a simple attitude. So I'll never do this again against the twice-born Brahmanas, right? Twice-born versus the birth from the mother and the womb. When you're born, second is you're initiated into the sacred rites of the Brahmana. But real Brahmins, not some proud caste conscious person. Someone's Ya Brahman Beti Sa Brahmana. The one who knows Brahman is the Brahmana. So as he was thinking in this way, he heard about the curse, he heard about the impending doom in the form of this snake bird. And he considered it to be fitting. Right? Normally you freak out. No, okay, good. Now I'll be able to burn up my karma. And also give me 7 days. Now I'll become detached. I've always wanted to be detached, but I've always, had to keep, ruling the kingdom and do my dharma. So he was attached to worldly life. He thought he was in his mind, because a real yogi thinks that way. Never think you're a big yogi. It's like I'm attached to so many things. So he considered it to be fitting. He was attached to worldly life, and the fire of Takshaka would soon be the means of his detachment. The curse. So then he gave up any desire for this world and the celestial one. Remember the Mimamsas, the celestial beings. He'd anyway long determined they should be renounced. He was a yogi. He was kind of stuck in doing his dharma, but he had always wanted to renounce and just focus his mind on what? Here we get to our Ishvara theme of our course. Considering service to the lotus feet of Krishna to be superior. This is the bhakti says, fix your mind on me, fix your mind on me. Remember all the verses. Well, this is what it looks like in this story. He wanted, his mind was always distracted with the affairs of the kingdom, even though he was a great bhakti, would always think of Krishna when he could. But, fact is, if you're emperor, you've obviously got to think about a lot of other things as well. You keep the kingdom going, serve your citizens. So anyway, long to give it all up, considering why. What is he going to do with his mind then if he gives all that up? Service to the lotus feet of Krishna. Service means love. So then he sat down to fast on the bank of the Ganga River. Let me fast. I've got 7 days. I don't want to be distracted. I don't even want to have to get up and make a meal because that's going to distract my mind. I've only got 7 days. Okay, so verse 7. Maybe we're going to skip verses every so often. Having made this resolve, to sit on the banks of the Ganga to fast to death, Parikṣit, descendant of the Pandavas, the 5 Pandavas, Arjuna in the Gita, right? The 5 brothers fighting the war on the one side, the Pandavas, sons of Pandu, not Pandu, they're Pandavas, sons of Pandu. Firm in the vows of a sage. No, now he's not in the mind of a warrior emperor. 7 days, he's given that up. Now he's going to enter into the mind of a sage. What is a sage? A sage is simply focused on the absolute. Wants to meet death with the mind fully fixed on Ishvara. So he's fixed in that mind, free from all attachments. He gives up his wife. He says, "Sweetheart, I've got 7 days to live. Please, you have to do your meditation now. I have to do mine. We have to part company. Beloved wife and children, they all understand. They're all on the same. They all understand the theology of existence. To break those bonds with beloved wife, children. So if you don't, death is going to make you break them. So what do? It's not like you have a choice. It's at the end of life. That's what one is supposed to do in the Vedic culture. And he happens to be blessed that he knows that the end of life is imminent in 7 days. And he sees that's a blessing. Because otherwise we think, oh, I'll do it later. I don't know when I'm going to die. So I'm not going to die today. So I won't do it today. I won't do that hard meditative work today. He can't tell himself that story because he's got 7 days. So when he sits there to fast, all the great sages from all over India who can purify the world just by their presence, these great beings, just in their presence, you become purified. You become inspired to give up nonsense, seeking nonsense things. What's a nonsense thing? Some trivial pleasure. Oh, what? Well, oh, I'm going to get married. I'm going to have kids. I'm going to get a good job. Well, it's all nonsense from the point of view of death, isn't it, my friends? So you can give all that up. They've already given it up, these saints. They arrive there with their disciples. All the young disciples, they want to be like their gurus, don't they? The saints, under the pretext of performing pilgrimage. Actually, they don't have to go on pilgrimage. They've already realized their Atman. They've already developed a firm bond in their mind with Bhagavan. What do they have to go to a sacred place for? But they go there because to help the pilgrims that go there. As pilgrims go to the holy place. But the sages, they go there to get purified. And what do pilgrims go there? To hear from the sages. So the sages say, okay, look, you know what? Instead of just sitting in the cave and doing our meditation, let's reach out to, let's make ourselves available to others so we can share these teachings. So they go to the holy places because that's where you go. If you're interested in spiritual knowledge, right? If you want to go skiing, where are you going to go? You're not going to the Sahara. You go up to to Napa Valley. Not Napa Valley. You go up to Lake Tahoe. You go up to the northeast. You go to places where you can do that thing. You go surfing. You go to Hawaii. So you want to learn spiritual truth. So you go to the places where you can learn that, where the sages abide. In India, the holy places. So then we get the list of all these great sages. I bet we'll find Patanjali in there. No. Dvaipayana, though, that's Vyas, Dvaipayana. Gautama, that's the author of the Mimamsa Sutra. He's a great sage. He's in the list. So you know a couple of them from even just this course. So all of these sages and other great sages and eminent Brahmins arrive also, as well as great kings. So everybody honors each other. The kings honored the eminent sages from various lineages that gathered there, and they paid obeisances by bowing his head to, the king, that Parikṣit does. Parikṣit honors them all. Namaha, namastubhyam, not tubhyam, bhavantaha, bhavan, bhavanti bhyaha. Homage to you all. So this is namaskaromi. But in Hindi it becomes namaste. I do namaste to you. Or namaskar, having done namas, but namo is the Sanskrit word. So he welcomes it. When they're seated comfortably and he had once again offered namaha to them, namaha. We all started doing namaha with COVID, didn't we? See? Everybody was going. Nobody wanted to shake hands. Remember a year or two ago? It's interesting how culture can penetrate in different ways. You could do this to somebody now; they know what you mean. Not 50 years ago, they think, "What the hell are you doing that for?" Now you can. Everybody is more familiar with it. So, when all the sages seated comfortably, right? King wearing a loincloth, renounced the kingdom, sitting there fasting. Not sleeping, not eating, doesn't want anything to distract his mind. He wants to really spend these last 7 days really, really training his mind to be 100% fixed on Bhagavan and Ishvara. Why? So when he dies, he goes to Ishvara, as Krishna says in the Gita. So the king stood before them, hands folded in supplication, mind completely detached from worldly affairs. And he told them of his intentions. He's going to fast. He wants to meet death, and he wants them to tell him what to do. How do I prepare for death? Oh, I'm not going to think of my kingdom and my family. Well, what am I going to think of then? What should the mind be doing at that moment of death? That's going to be the question. So he compliments them. He says, "Oh, we kings are contemptible. We hunt. We engage in violence. You're very kind to me that you come and sit here because I normally, he's being humble. Okay. So I'm a sinful member of this kingly dynasty. And my mind is always attached to household affairs. I'm attached to my queen. I'm attached to my children, my kingdom, my treasury. But the supreme Lord of all is manifested in the form of a Brahmana's curse. He sees that as the blessing of God, that God has come to cut his detachments while he's still alive, because death is just going to drag you out and doesn't give you any time to prepare. So he's seeing it as God's kindness. Okay, you're going to have to leave anyway. Now I'm going to create a situation where I'm going to give you 7 days to prepare, but you're going to die. He sees that as a blessing. How does he put it? Supreme Lord of all is manifested in the form of a Brahmana's curse. And this manner has therefore become the trigger for my detachment from worldly affairs. Krishna's calling me to him. Ishvara's calling me to him. But to do that, I have to be detached from the world. Because if I have attachment to the world, then I get trapped by the world. I remain in the world. If we die with desires, my friends, well, you come back next life to continue to fulfill them. And in that next life, you'll be creating more desires. Desire is the enemy. It's the glue. It's the anchor that binds us to the world. And he's realizing that Bhagavan is the trigger for my detachment. And he says, because of such a curse, people who are attached to worldly affairs would normally be immediately thrown into a state of fear. If you or I were told we had 7 days to live, would we freak out? Normal people like us, those who are attached to worldly affairs, why would we freak out? Because, I haven't done this and I haven't done that, and I still, I haven't finished my degree, and I was going to get married, and I was going to blah, 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 blah. Attachments. So we might be freaked out, not a real yogi. Your yogi seeks detachment, is looking for opportunities to be detached. So may the sages, the great yogis, and Mother Ganga, the great goddess of the Ganga, may they accept me as someone who has turned to the Lord. Please, I want this. You sages, don't look at me anymore as a warrior. Look at me now. I'm a yogi. I'm trying to become a yogi. So just look at me in that way now. So please accept me as someone who has turned to the Lord, a bhakta, Ishvara. Okay, here's our Ishvara. Remember, this course is Ishvara. And whose mind is fixed on him. Ishvara is not just a philosophical principle. It's not just something you debate about. It's something you fix your mind on and dedicate your whole life to. That's why we need to end the course on this note. Bring it down to real life practice. Bhakti Yoga. We have a whole course next semester on Bhakti Yoga, my friends, and we'll probably start it with this very story. So if you like the story, and stories like this, consider joining us next semester. Asynchronous, so you can download it when you like. We may not be allowed to do that anymore after next semester, so if you can fit it into your schedule and it works for you, I'd love to have some of you that you bring in this background that you've had from this course and join us for Bhakti Yoga next semester. But this is and we'll be reading the Bhāgavatam, and this is how the Bhāgavatam gets spoken. How does it get delivered? So he goes, look, accept me as someone whose mind is fixed on Bhāgavata, and let the name of the snake bird, Takshaka, or whatever magical thing was discharged by the Brahman or whatever it was, let it bite me. And you please sing the glories of Vishnu. This is what you do. This is called kirtan. You go to a yoga studio nowadays, increasingly they're arranging kirtan, the chanting of mantras, like Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So he goes, may fellowship with those who have taken shelter of the unlimited Ishvara. In other words, let me be, in my next life, if I have to take birth again, let me have the friendship of other bhaktas. Why? Because when bhaktas are together, what do? inspire each other in their bhakti. So may that, as well as affection for them, be bestowed on me, and will never be the next birth I may take in this material world. He's not assuming he's going to get liberated. He's too humble for that, even though he's the grand nephew of Krishna. Let me, okay, so I'll take birth again, but let me at least in my next life be a bhakta and have the friendship of bhaktas. That's his only wish, and this is a yogic wish. It's not like a wish for a material thing. It's a wish for a spiritual thing. So the king who had handed over the responsibilities to his son, the son has now taken over the kingdom, and was determined and resolved in mind. You have to be determined to be a yogi. The southern, you have to forgive my a little bit out of breath because I'm recuperating still. So, so on the southern side of the Ganga, facing north, he sat down. And this is all auspicious. I actually, again, I've never found out why it is that you sit on the southern side of the Ganga. I've seen a lot of references to sitting on the southern side. You and face north, maybe that's the Himalayas, but why the southern side? Must be something auspicious about it. I've never actually encountered an explanation as to why. He sat down on kusha grass, as the British called it elephant grass when they were in India, with the roots facing east. So the reasons for all of this, there's a footnote there. Maybe we can look at it some other time. So when he is seated, right, awaiting death, and all the celestials are all glorifying, it's a great event. I mean, he's a great being. He's the grandson of Arjuna. And the great sages who would assemble there, they also praised him. He's going to fast to death. This is a real yogic act. He's not a, even when he was a king, he was a great yogi. He's just doing his dharma. He was just serving others. But now he's really showing his yogic, inner nature. They all say, sadhu, sadhu, well done. And verse 20. So this is, don't worry about this. From those who are the devoted of Krishna, for the bhaktas of Krishna, Ishvara in the form of Krishna, there's nothing surprising about the fact that the ones who desire to become personal associates of Bhagavan, if you want to go to Krishna's divine realm, within Brahman, personal realm, if you want to attain a personal relationship with Krishna, we'll see what that looks like in the next couple of classes. You're not merging into Brahman like Shankara. No, remember Ramanuja, God is distinct, the souls are distinct. So what happens when the distinct souls get liberated? They go to Vishnu's realm. Where is that? In Brahman. What's it made of? Is it made of particles and forces and matter? No, it's all made of pure consciousness. So those who desire to become personal associates of Bhagavan, they renounce the throne. Well, who wants a throne? All the headaches of being an emperor. How is that happiness? Constantly have to worry about neighboring kingdoms trying to attack you. Constantly got to punish miscreants. Maybe you don't like to do that. That's part of your dharma, and so on. So now we will all remain here until this foremost of Bhagavan's devotees. He's a great bhakta, even when he was an emperor. All the sages say, we may be sages, maybe he's a king, or more worldly embedded, but he is actually a greater bhakta than all of us. So we'll remain here until he relinquishes his mature body and departs to the supreme realm, Vaikuntha, the abode of God, the kingdom of God, to reside as Ramanuja's. But that's his theology, which we've encountered, that God is a personal being. So where does God reside and abide when not engaging in creation and supporting the universe? Well, he abides in his divine realm. And there's infinite Vishnus. It's not like God is actually creating. One Vishnu does the creating, but there's all other higher forms of Vishnu. God doesn't have a job to do. Creation is a job. One Vishnu may take care of that job, but what about the source Vishnu? He's not trapped by a dharma of creation. If you have to create, it sort of means that you're also limited by the duty of creation. So how can you be supremely unlimited then? So where does this got the source of all forms of Ishvara? abide. Different forms do different things. Okay, fine. Vishnu creates. But the source Ishvara just engages in loving, joyful, loving exchanges with his infinity of liberated beings. An infinity of forms of Vishnu to each soul can have their own Vishnu to exchange love with. This is the kingdom of God in the Hindu traditions, in the Vaishnava traditions, Different traditions all frame this differently. So we will remain here until this foremost of Bhagavan's devotees relinquishes the material body and departs to the supreme realm Vaikuntha we were talking about, which is free of sorrowing and hankering. You don't hanker anything because you're fully fulfilled. God fulfills all of your, or any desire is completely satiated by the wonders of God. So the assembled sages, they're fixed in yogas, right? And after listening to Parikṣit, desiring to, Parikṣit wants to hear about the deeds of Vishnu. Vishnu is Ishvara. Ishvara has various forms. Most of you have heard of Vishnu. Shiva we heard in the Shvetashvatara. And Ishvara manifests in the world. It does deeds. So if you're a bhakta, you want to hear about them. That's super cool. That's really cool things. Try reading the Ramayana. See the cool things that Lord Ram did when he went to reclaim Sita. And we'll be reading some of the deeds of Krishna. So what does the king say? He says, you've assembled here from all the corners of the world. All the great sages came from everywhere. And we'll skip a bit. Therefore, he's the king now. He's sitting there in his loincloth. All the sages sitting there, and says, does his namahas, and then he says, therefore, with full faith in you, O learned ones, I submit to you this most worthy query. I'm still a king. You're still Brahmins. You're still the teachers. Now I'm asking you to answer this question. From all, here it is. The first question. He's going to ask 6 or 7 or 8 later on. This is the first question. From all those duties that are to be performed by everyone, we all have dharma. Remember the Gita. His dharma was a king. The king has to oversee the kingdom, and the king has to make sure everybody else is following their dharma. That's the dharma of the king. You have a dharma to your wife. You have a dharma to your kids. You have a dharma to everybody that you come in contact with. You act with them in a certain way. You go to a store, and you buy buy something. Your dharma is to treat the salesperson with courtesy and pay the money that it requires. That's the dharma of that particular situation. Drive that down the road, light goes red, your dharma is to stop. So the infinite dharma is the dharma, driving dharma, eating dharma, right? In Western culture, you use a knife and fork. Indian culture, you don't use your left hand, you use your hands, but not your left. These are all dharmas. So even wiping your butt is a dharma. If you, in India and many countries, you use water to wipe your butt. They would think it disgusting to use toilet paper. So dharma is context specific, even to the very basic thing like wiping your backside. So everyone has so many dharmas. So all those dharmas that are to be performed by everyone, out of all of them, which is the optimum dharma that should be performed specifically by those about to die? Different. When you're alive, you have all these dharmas, but I'm going to die now, so my family dharma is useless. I'm giving up my kingdom. That dharma is useless. Not going to help me die. Or I'm going to fast. So I'm no eating dharma. What's my dharma? What's the dharma of the moment of death? That's his question. Please give this your full consideration. That's his question to the sages. They're like, wow, how do we answer this? Right? So at that moment, by chance, the son of Vyas is the person who wrote the Vedanta Sutra in tradition, Bharadayana Vyas. Son called Śuka. Remember the name Śuka, right? King is Parikṣit. Most of the Bhāgavatam is an exchange between Parikṣit and Śuka. It's like the Gita, an exchange between Krishna and Arjuna. Great Śuka happened to arrive there. He was wandering around the earth in the guise of an ascetic renunciate, completely unattached to anything. He was satisfied by the realization of his Atman, inner self. He was just wondering. He had nowhere to go. Burning up the last little bit of karma. He was absorbed in the bliss of the Atman. Where you go? You got nothing to do, nowhere to go. He's in a body because the body needed a little bit more karma to burn up before he died. He wanders around waiting for the body to drop dead. He was surrounded by young boys because the children, he's so pure and sweet and naive, children could immediately relate to his innocence. His elevated characteristics lay concealed, couldn't see it. Probably he was dirty, right? Slept under a tree, clean dirt, forest dirt. But no one could see that he was actually a great experienced the Atman. He was 16 years of age, handsome feet and youthful, handsome because he doesn't think of himself as handsome, but somebody like us who was trapped in ignorance, we judge people by their bodily looks if we're in ignorance of the Atman. So other people thought he was a good-looking lad. He was handsome, youthful feet. All right, he describes him. What's a handsome person back then? Well, you got hands, thighs, arms, shoulders, cheeks, and he had wide eyes, stately nose, symmetrical ears. I have to lean back, my friends, because my back is hurting. Ouch. And he had attractive eyebrows. His fine neck was like a conch shell. On all of this description of his beauty, okay? You can read it for yourselves. What is a beautiful person? Look, what is the aesthetic culture of that time considered to be beauty? You can read this. He was naked. Why is he naked? Well, he has no sense of shame, of gender. He's not thinking male, female, because he's come to the Atman beyond that. And there's a lovely story that Śuka one day was walking by when he first left his father Vyas, he's the son of Vyas, walks by a river. And there, like we have male toilets and female toilets, and you don't go to if you're a male, you don't go to the female toilet and vice versa. So they had parts of the river, even today in village India, where it's for the ladies, that's for the men. He didn't know any of that. So he's walking by ladies, and beautiful young girls are bathing naked in the river. He's naked, right? Because he doesn't have any sense of shame or gender. Why would you wear clothes then? He's not, unless you're cold, but even then he's absorbed in the Atman. You don't experience the elements. And he walks past, and the girls, they don't do anything. They're naked. He walks by, maybe looks at them. Then his father comes running after him, trying to get him to come back home because he's just gone. And he's the great Vyas, great sage. And when he passes the girls, they all immediately scuttle out of the river and they cover their bodies in modesty, as a young girl would. And then he's an old man. He said, why? Look, I'm old enough to be your great granddad. Why do you behave like that, react like that with me? But when my gorgeous 16-year-old son walked by, you were the slightest bit perturbed. And they said to him, because you saw us as females. You saw us as gendered beings. And therefore we responded as gendered beings. When man comes, we cover ourselves. But your son didn't. He didn't see us as gendered beings. He saw our upward. So we had no need to respond in a gendered way. We could recognize his saintly, his yogic vision. Lovely story. So there he is, walk around naked. And he was dark complexioned, he was dark. And all of this, he was captivating to women because of his charming smile. His pure, beautiful smile, radiating love. Very captivating. Anyway, so there he comes. He comes into the assembly. Remember, the king's sitting there, all the other sages. And the king says, what's the dharma of someone about to die? And in comes Śuka. So the sages could immediately recognize this is not a normal being. Not like us, where we're doing our practices, we're trying to fix our mind, we're meditating. We haven't got there yet, but he has. So all those sages, verse 28, could recognize his saintly characteristics, even though his luster was covered over. He'd be living in the forest. So they all rose up from their seats. Thereupon Parikṣit, beloved of Vishnu, offered respects. So he does the same thing to Śuka, right? Gives him an elevated seats, so forth. Surrounded by the sages, Brahmana sages, kingly sages, celestial sages, the divine Śuka great soul among great souls. He shone forth in that place like the moon, surrounded by the multitude of planets. So now he's going to answer the king's question. So Śuka was acutely intelligent. Just because you're a brilliant yogi doesn't mean you're not, he can see everything as it is. He can see clearly what is the guna, what is Atma, what is not Atma. So the king, devotee of Vishnu, he's a Bhāgavata. That's the word for a devotee of Vishnu. Bhāgavata is the name of the text, but it's also actually can also mean the devotee himself or herself. Bhāgavata, Bhāgavati, for the ladies. He approached the sage, who was sitting peacefully. He just happened to walk in the assembly. They offered him a seat. Sits. Doesn't matter whether he comes, he goes, he sits. So Parikṣit bowed his head and approached him. Okay, now Śuka has a reason to focus. Someone approached him with a question. So he gives them the usual compliments. Oh, your lordship has arrived here unexpectedly out of kindness, and he goes on like this, saying, by simply verse 33. By simply remembering such person as yourself, our houses become pure. Even just thinking about you, we become pure. Such is your saintly nature. So, from being in your presence, O great yogi, the king says to Śuka, the 16-year-old naked sage, Śuka, King Parikṣit. Even being in your presence, O great yogi, even the greatest of sins are destroyed. Just by contemplating this wonderful yogi, your mind becomes pure. Just like the enemies of the celestials are destroyed in the presence of Vishnu. All right. So now he continues his preamble, and then we get to verse 37. You should read all of this, my friends. We just don't have time to. It's not hard now. Don't tell me this is hard. There's no philosophy here. You've deserved last 2 weeks. You're going to have, this is the icing on the cake. Okay. This is going to be nice. You're going to enjoy the rest of this course and enjoy these beautiful stories. Absorb your mind in them. You'll be tested on them, so make sure you read them. But listen, these are not philosophically dense. There is some philosophy there. It's more, what does bhakti yoga look like in real life? So here's this question. Remember the question. The first question is, what is the dharma of one about to die? Something like that I may put on the quiz. What is the dharma of one about to die? Then he asks these other questions. Okay, pay attention, my friends. You know what the quizzes look like. Some might say something, what are the questions of the king, Śuka? And I'll put in something that's not a question. I'll say, which of these is not a question? I'm not saying I'll do that, but that's just, you're used to, by now you know what the quizzes look like. This is the sort of thing. If Laura it remembers, she might put a question together. First question he asked, before Śuka came, the other sages, he said, what's the dharma of someone about to die? Now he's already put that out there. Now he's asking these questions to Śuka specifically. Everyone's recognized Śuka should answer the king. Śuka is the greatest of sages. Let him respond to the king. So now he doesn't repeat that question. He says this. He puts it in a different way. Therefore, I ask of you, the most eminent of gurus among yogis, what is the means of perfection in life? What should be done at every moment by a person in the world about to die? He knows he's got 7 days, but we don't. What if we might have 6 days to live? We might get a message from the university saying, some student got hit by a truck. We'd be like, oh, no, did anybody know him? Can it come? We don't know when it's going to happen. Look at me, here I am. They cut out half my backbone. Right? Who knew that was going to cut? Where did that come from? We don't know when we're going to die, my friend. So therefore, every minute we should be thinking I could die any minute. So let me do. So what do I do with my mind every minute then? Right? What should be done at every moment? Verse 37. By a person in this world about to die. We're all about to die. What should be heard? What do you want? You should be listening to some rubbish TV, some nonsense sounds, some music that just kind of bangs on about God knows what, drugs and sex. Is that what we should do with our minds? What should be heard? What mantra should be chanted? What japa? What name of Ishvara? We know about Om. We know about Ishvara and the sound of Om. What mantras should we be reciting, my friends? What actions should be performed? We have our worldly actions, but what about actions for our soul? What should be done at every moment by a person? And he repeats it. What should be done at every moment by a person in this world about to die? He just repeated it here. Oh no, I'm sorry, I jumped a line. I beg your pardon. What action should be performed? What should be remembered? Remembered means what do you keep in mind? Most people remember our desires, think our needs, our hopes. We keep that. That's what we remember. Remembrance means what you keep in your mind. What should be worshipped? And tell me, what should be avoided? What's going to be what is going to be detrimental to the moment of death, to my next destination? What sort of behavior should I be avoiding, my friends? 39. Indeed, O Brahmana, it is known. Okay, forget that. 40, only because we don't have enough time. I mean, all these verses are wonderful, but we've only got 18 minutes. Addressed in the question in this way with these sincere words, the great Śuka, son of Badarayana, responded to the king. Let's get some of his responses. So here's the response. Book 2, chapter 1. The question of yours, O king, posed for the welfare of people is excellent. This is the excellent question. What should we do to prepare for death? Because everything else is temporary. All these other questions we ask, how am I going to pass my exams? How am I going to get a job? How am I going to find a partner? These are all temporary things. They come and they go, what about death? So he says, it's an excellent question. It is appreciated by those who know the Atman. And listen to this, look at this statement. From everything that is useful for people to hear, lots of things are useful, right? How to wash, how to eat, how to cook, how to go through school, useful. But it is the most worthwhile, because all these other things are temporary. I have to lean back, my friends, because my backbone is aggravating me right now. I'm not supposed to, if I sit, I'm putting downward pressure on the bottom of the spine, as I told you then. I took out the lemon there. I'm probably sick of me saying that. For those people who have not seen the truth of the Atman, if we're not yogis, then they're attached to their homes and households. There are thousands of things that seem worth hearing. There's so many things. Oh, did you hear the latest news or sports or whatever it is? There are thousands of things we think that seem interesting to the mind. The prime of life is carried away by sexual intercourse. When you're young, you find a partner and you just want to have sex all the time, according to this. So what do you do in the prime of life? When you're a kid, you're in school. Okay, once you get to the prime of life, meaning you're a young adult, so most of that time thereafter, it's carried away by sex, by sleep in the night, right? At nighttime. And through striving for wealth and maintaining one's family in the day. What do you do in the day? You go out, you work, you try to make money, you try to maintain your family. This is the life of the non-yogi. The day you struggle to work and make money to pay your bills, and at night, what do you get? A little sex, and then you sleep. Obsessed with one's body, children and wife, which are like illusory soldiers. Why are they illusory? Because they can die at any second. But the non-yogi's obsessed with my own body, my health, my aches and pain. That's me going on about my backbone. Right? Obsessed with the children, my kids, parents, wife. But they're illusory soldiers. They're subject to death at any moment. I mean, not that there's anything wrong with that, as long as that's not all one uses one's life for. Remember, the Gita was all about do your duty, of course, have families, have children, love your kids, love your family, you're entitled to make money to pay bills, but not more than that. Entitled to live nice, healthy life, not to accumulate mega amounts of money while other people are starving. No. But you're allowed to do your dharma in a decent way. But that's not all. While you seek the Atman, Atman has to be, and Bhakti, Bhagavad Ishvara. While you seek Ishvara and pick up your Atman along the way, while you do that, then these other dharmas have value, have meaning, are then acceptable from a yogic point of view. So, but if one isn't connected to the Atman, isn't connected to Ishvara as goals in life, as real goals in life, as ultimate goals in life,
These other lesser temporary goals, which are all finished at death, if they're exclusively the goals of life, then that's a waste. So if one is obsessed with these things, meaning complete obsessed means when your whole mind is absorbed in that and nothing else, then one does not perceive their demise, even while actually perceiving it. You see your kids are getting older, they're going to go off and do their own lives. You see your wife getting older, you see your parents getting older and dying. Even you perceive it, you pretend you don't. Therefore, O son of Bharata, one desiring freedom from fear, fear that I'm going to lose my body, fear I'm not going to pass my exams, fear I'm never going to get a job, fear that I won't get married, fear that my wife or husband will leave me. All these fears. Fears of COVID. So if you want to be free from here, what should you do? Hear about, glorify, and remember Hari, Ishvara, Ishvara. In Indian tradition now, we're talking about Ishvara now. The rest of the course is not just Ishvara as an abstract philosophical principle, but Ishvara actually manifesting in the world in the form of the great Hindu incarnations of Ishvara, Rama, Krishna. Here we're focusing on Krishna. One should hear about the stories. That's what we're going to do in this course. Glorify, we enjoy them. And remember Hari, he is Bhagavan, Ishvara, Krishna, the soul of everything. So with the perfection of life for a person, whether through the paths of Sankhya or Yoga, now you know something about Sankhya and Yoga. You could add Vedanta, Nyaya. What is the goal of it all? Through performance of duty or through knowledge, what's the goal of it all? Is to remember Narayana at the end of life. Remember God, remember Ishvara. Narayana is another name for Vishnu. I hope you don't get confused. Vishnu has infinite names. There's the Vishnu Sahasranama in South India, the 1,000 names of Vishnu. And so Krishna, Vishnu, Narayana, it's all the same. But for our purposes. Next semester we do Bhakti Yoga, we'll discuss a little bit how these different forms of the one, what's the relationship between them. So usually, O king, now Śuka, the naked sage, is replying to the king's question. Sages who have desisted from mundane rules and regulations like Mimamsa, the Vedic rituals, and who are situated in the state beyond the gunas, which means beyond matter. So what's the state beyond matter? The Atman. Usually, those who have attained Brahman, they relish the qualities and stories of Hari. So it's not like Shankara would say, when you attain Brahman, that's the end. No. Not for the Vaishnavas, not for Ramanuja. You've attained Brahman, fine. You've attained your Atman, fine. But from that state, you can now absorb the mind in Ishvara. I'm going to sit up because otherwise otherwise I don't feel like I'm being not a very good professorial profile. So those who attain the state beyond the gunas, attain Brahman, they relish the qualities and stories of Hari. And we're going to spend the rest of the semester reading the stories of Hari. What does Ishvara look like in our space and time, in human, when Ishvara enters into the human dimension of space and time, to our universe. Okay, we do that next week. Oh no, this week, do that on Wednesday. What day is it today? Tuesday, or whatever. We do it in the second lecture. So this Bhāgavata Purāṇa, this text that we're reading, we're in the first book, and then we jump to the 10th book with the stories of Krishna. This Bhāgavata Purāṇa, the text, if you want to know how it's spelled, there it is. It's non-different from Brahman. It's a literary incarnation. I learned it from my father, Vyasa, at the end of the previous age. He's saying, although I had attained perfection, he'd attained what's perfection? He's Atman. And I was situated in the state beyond the gunas, beyond matter. My mind was captured by the pastimes of Krishna. Śuka is saying, that's maybe, he realized his Atman, but his mind was attracted by the Leelas of Krishna. The chanting. I will narrate that Purāṇa to you, Parikṣit.
Devotion for Krishna is awakened in those who have faith in it. If we have faith in this Bhāgavata Purāṇa, the Purāṇa says, then we become bhaktas. That bhakti will grow in our hearts, devotion for Ishvara. Eventually take over our lives, and all these other things become inconsequential. The chanting of the name of Hari. You've heard of mantras, some of you. If you haven't, then you know it's part of our Western spiritual landscape now. You go to a yoga studio, they'd be chanting mantras. It's not something Indian anymore. A global religious act. You can either chant in a singing, or you can chant in a sort of meditative sort of way. Names of Hari, like Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. You've heard that mantra. Many mantras, other mantras. Om Namo Bhāgavate Vāsudevāya. Another Krishna mantra. Om Namo Narayanaya. These are the names of Hari. So this chanting has been prescribed for those yogis who are disinterested in material enjoyment. Those who realize that however much I run around, however much money I have, however all of these desires are satisfied, I'm still not in my heart satisfied. I'm still missing something. So then, chanting of the name. Those who desire freedom from fear. What is the use of many years squandered mindlessly? What was the use of running around? Get married, get a job, pay the bills, have a family, send the kids to college, get old, go on a cruise. What's the use? Baba does. What's the use? Many years squandered mindlessly. Oh, do whatever people are supposed to do. Watch telly, watch TV. Mindlessly by a deluded person. Deluded means not aware of the ultimate truth of the Atman. What's the use? Look, let it be known that it's better for 1 hour to be spent. Better 1 hour spent fixing the mind on the mantra than the whole life just running, watching telly and just doing stupid, useless things. So then he jumps. There is a limit to your lifespan, 7 days. You've only got 7 days. Take all steps necessary to prepare for death during this time. So when the end comes, when we get old, a person should sever desire for the body and all that is associated with the body. We have to cut off all our attachments, because the attachments bring us back into the next life. Free from fear. What then? One should concentrate on the 3 constituent phonemes of Om. Remember Patanjali Om? That Ishvara comes as a sound Om. Well, here it is again. This is the mantra. What is that Om? The great and pure Brahman in the form of sound. What Om is. One should restrain one's mind, chittavritti nirodha, and control one's breathing, pranayama, keeping the mind fixed on that seed of Brahman. And on like this. Then one should meditate on one limb of Ishvara. We should fix the mind on Ishvara with uninterrupted mind. After controlling the mind, this is meditation. Removing, what do you mean? What does it mean to control it? Remove it from sense objects so that you're not listening. Your mind consciousness isn't pouring out through the ear or the eyes. You close it all down. Then what do you do with the mind? You fix it on Vishnu. The sound Vishnu or visualization of Vishnu. The mind should take pleasure there alone, the supreme destination of Vishnu. Okay, do you see how this fits in our course, my friends? So you can argue for or against Bhagavan. This is the Brahman of the Upanishads, of the Vedanta, that they defended against Buddhists, that they defended against the Mimamsas, that they even developed a school of logicians within the Vedanta tradition, the Vedic tradition called Nyaya. But what do you do with all of that? Once you've established that there is a Bhagavan, a Brahman that is Bhagavan, once you've defended it against rival views, what do you do? This is what you do. You fix your mind on Bhagavan. This is why we're concluding our course this way. While this concentration on Vishnu is being practiced, we practice fixing the mind, the symptoms of bhakti appear in the yogi. Devotion, love of God arises in the mind. This yoga, which is most auspicious, quickly manifests. So he goes on, and he talks, and he rejects the Mimamsa. He says, look, the Vedic scriptures, the old, ritualistic scriptures, is such that one's intelligence puzzles over the meaningless words. We don't even know what those words mean. Let's check how much time do we have? 4 minutes. So a sage who's not deluded, but whose intelligence is fixed on the self. What does a sage, a wise person, an enlightened being look like? What does his behavior look like? Should accept whatever things are necessary for accomplishing this purpose and no more, only to realize the Atman. One should not struggle for anything more, realizing that doing so would be simply labor for nothing. Chasing any other dream, any ambition, all of it is useless because eventually it's taken away from us. Okay, verse 6. It is the Atman that is the cherished goal. It is a part of the unlimited Bhagavan. So Atman is a part of Bhagavan. So both of them are goals for yoga. Your own little part, your own little Atman, but your supreme Atman. If you just seek your own Atman, then you're Jnani. Then you're just, that's the end of the journey for you. But what makes a bhakta is that the bhakta doesn't just seek the Atman, does that too, but then seeks a higher Atman, Bhagavan. Ishvara. So it is the Atman that's a cherished goal. It is a part of the unlimited Bhagavan. It is self-manifest, it's perfect, it lies within the heart. This Atman is the goal that one should fix in mind and worship contentedly. In this way that the cause of samsara is brought to an end. This is how we finish the cycle of birth and death. All right, and then there's various descriptions of how do you fix the visualization of God. Some people, not everybody, some focus on the mantra, and that's fix the mind on the Om or Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya or Hare Krishna mantra that I recited previously. But some people, they contemplate with concentration on the Supreme Being, Ishvara, in the inner space of the heart. He has a smiling face, and that's what all Indian art is. It gives us these paintings of these beautiful, like the one behind me. Gives us, Krishna's blue, he wears a yellow garland. I mean, you can't see very well. I'm holding it wrong. Right, doesn't matter. But let's read this. He has a smiling face, large eyes large as lotuses. His cloth is yellowish, and all of this description you can read for yourself. Okay, I put it down. Read it. Make sure you read it for the quiz, my friends. His beautiful smiling face is delightful with lustrous, clean, curly, bluish locks. All right. Okay, my friends. So we stop there, and I hope you are feeling good about the new direction the course is taking now and going to end with. And you've done some good hard work. You did very well in the quiz. Don't think I've ever had so many. Well, I told you I never had so many 100 grades, but also never had so many A's. So if you haven't done well, my friends, you have to ask yourself the honest question: did you follow the videos? Did you take the review sheets seriously? Because if 28 people in the form got 100, you can't tell me that was not an easy exam. I've never had that before. I've never had more than 4 people get 100. So still have a chance. Do well in the final if you make a big jump. If you've not done well in the first 2 quizzes, and you know yourself whether you did your dharma, or not. Still not too late. If we see a really big jump, didn't do well, big huge jump improvement in the final, we will take that in consideration. We can't neglect the first 2 quizzes, but we'll minimize their effect. All right, I don't know what else to say about the quiz anyway. So we'll see you again soon, and then we'll jump to the birth of Krishna. Okay, so we know what Bhakti Yoga looks like. It's about using it all one's life, most especially at the end. But the thing is, we don't know when the end is going to come. So therefore, that's why we use the whole life, because death could come at any point. To fix the mind on Vishnu, and we've had some sense of what that looks like in the life of Parikṣit. Hope you enjoyed the stories, and we'll see you soon. Have a great rest of the day.